The Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical psychology for today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, narrated by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from The Subtleties of the Inimitable Mulla Nasrudin by Idries Shah. This audio is made available by the Idries Shah Foundation. Acknowledgments. Many Nasrudin enthusiasts throughout the world have helped in the assembling of these tales. Their contribution has included translation, tape recording, comparing variants, reciting stories, visiting immigrant communities, and literary research. I wish to thank all of them. Representatives are the following: Abdel Karim Suraverdi, Khan Abdul Karim Khan, Goethe Ewald Anderson, Sufi Anwar Ali Shah, Sardar M. Akil Hussein Khan, Barlas, Don Ishmael Benassar, Sir Edwin Chapman Andrews, M. K. Chowdhury, Helena Edwards, Sheikh Fakhruddin Al-Amoudi, Sharif Faris El-Helabi, Feroz Abdali, Leon Flamholk, Hazrat Hafiz Abdullah, Bey Ildirim, Saeed Iskandar, Jazim El-Anazi, Edward P. Lumsden, David Wade, Yar M. Khan, and Dr. Zeki El-Mahassani. Saying of Mulla Nasrudin. If I survive this life without dying, I'll be surprised. Saying of Mulla Nasrudin. If I knew what 2 and 2 were, I would say 4. Radio. When Mulla Nasrudin arrived at the immigration barrier in London, the officer in charge asked, "Where are you from?" Nasrudin said, "Grr, the East." Name? Mulla Nasrudin. Have you an impediment in your speech? Whee! No. Then why do you talk like that? Pip, pip, pip. I learnt it from English by radio. Where there's a will? Mulla, my son has written from the abode of learning to say that he has completely finished his studies. Console yourself, madam, with the thought that God will no doubt send him more. I might do you a favour. Nasrudin was penniless, but did not want his friend Aslam to know it. Unfortunately, Aslam asked him for change for a gold coin. "It is rather worn," said Nasrudin. "How worn, Mulla?" "So worn that it is worth less than the rate of exchange. Try someone else." "No, I trust you. Give me just what you think it is worth." "Well," said the Mullah, "it seems to me to be worth so little that you would have to pay me something to take it off your hands." Needs. As the Mullah emerged from the mosque after prayers, a beggar sitting in the street solicited alms. The following conversation ensued. Mullah: "Are you extravagant?" Beggar: "Yes, Mullah." "Do you like sitting around drinking coffee and smoking?" "Yes." "I suppose you like to go to the baths every day?" "Yes." "And maybe amuse yourself even by drinking with your friends?" "Yes, I like all these things." "Tut, tut," said the Mullah, and gave him a gold piece. A few yards further on, another beggar who had overheard this conversation begged for alms importunately. "Mullah, Are you extravagant?
No, Mullah.
Do you like sitting around drinking coffee and smoking?
No.
I suppose you like to go to the baths every day?
No.
And maybe amuse yourself even by drinking with your friends?
No, I want only to live meagerly and to pray.
Whereupon the mullah gave him a small copper coin.
But why, wailed the beggar, do you give me, an economical and pious man, a penny, when you give that extravagant fellow a sovereign?
Ah, replied the mullah, his needs are greater than yours. This tale is reproduced by courtesy of Sir Edwin Chapman Andrews. The End of the World. When will the end of the world come, Mullah? Which end of the world? Well, how many are there? 2, the greater and the lesser. If my wife dies, that is the lesser end of the world. But if I die, that is the greater end of the world. A bite. Nasrudin visited a stingy priest, who said to him,
"Would you like a bite to eat?"
When the food arrived, the mullah saw that it was literally nothing more than a morsel. At that moment a beggar looked through the window. The priest shouted,
"Go away, or I'll break your neck."
"Brother," said Nasrudin to the beggar, "go away quickly, for I can testify that here, for once, is a man who isn't exaggerating." Gossip. "Mullah, your wife is a terrible gossip. She visits everyone in town and gossips all the time." "I don't believe that. Otherwise she would surely have dropped in on me from time to time and gossiped, and she has never done that." Satisfied. Nasrudin moved into a new house. The postman called and said, "I hope that you're satisfied with the mail deliveries." "More than satisfied," said Nasrudin, "and in fact, from tomorrow you may double my order." Costly. Nasrudin opened a booth with a sign above it. 2 questions on any subject answered for £5. A man who had 2 very urgent questions handed over his money, saying, £5 is rather expensive for 2 questions, isn't it?" "Yes," said Nasrudin. "And the next question, please." Problems of loneliness. Something frightened Mulla Nasrudin as he was walking down a road. He threw himself into a ditch and then began to think that he had been frightened to death. After a time he became very cold and hungry. He walked home and told his wife the sad news, and went back to his ditch. His wife, sobbing bitterly, went to the neighbours for comfort. "My husband is dead, lying in a ditch." "How do you know?" "There was nobody to see him, so he had to come and tell me himself, poor dear." Arabic scholar. Nasrudin claimed that he had been to Mecca, and that he had lived a long time in Arabia. "Tell us then the name of a camel in Arabic," one of his cronies asked in the tea-house. "Why not have a sense of proportion," said the mullah, "instead of thinking about such a huge creature?" "What about the Arabic word for ant, then?" "Far too small." Someone called out, "What is the Arabic word for lamb, then?" "I am sure they do have a word for them, but I wasn't there long enough to find out. I left just as the lambs had been born, and they had not the time for a naming ceremony." The problems of delay. The 4-engined aircraft was in trouble. and the captain's voice came through the loudspeakers. One of the engines is faulty, but there is no danger. It will mean that we will be 5 minutes late, flying on only 3 engines. Some of the passengers were a little alarmed, but the mullah, who was among them, spoke comfortingly. 5 minutes does not make much difference, friends. So everyone calmed down. Soon afterwards, however, they heard the captain's voice again. Another engine is malfunctioning. We can manage on 2 engines, but it will mean that we will be half an hour late in arriving. Some of the passengers seemed uneasy, but the mullah again addressed them. What is half an hour after all? It is better than going on donkey back. The passengers accepted this philosophy and settled down in their seats again. Hardly another half hour had passed before they heard the pilot's voice again. I am sorry to have to inform you that a 3rd engine is out of order. We shall be an hour late in arriving at our destination. Mulla Nasrudin said, Let's just hope the last engine does not break down, or we'll be up here all day. The Forester. The forester was rather surprised to see such an unlikely figure as Nasrudin applying for a job. I'll give you a chance, he said, although you don't look the type who could fell trees. Take this axe and chop down as many trees as you can from that plantation. After 3 days, Nasrudin reported to him. How many trees have you felled? All the trees in the plantation. The forester looked, and sure enough there were no trees left. Nasrudin had done as much work as would be expected from 30 men. But where did you learn to chop trees at that rate? In the Sahara Desert. But there aren't any trees in the Sahara. No, there aren't now, said Nasrudin. Moral: if you can fell trees, you can fell trees. It takes one to know one. A practical joker challenged Nasrudin in the tea-house. People say you are very clever, but I bet you 100 gold pieces you can't fool me. I can. Just wait for me, said Nasrudin, and he walked out. 3 hours later, the man was still waiting for Nasrudin and his trick. Finally, he conceded that he had been fooled. He went to the mullah's house and put a bag of gold as his forfeit through the window. Nasrudin was lying on his bed, planning his trick. He heard the chink of coins, found the bag, and counted the gold. Good, he said to his wife. Kind destiny has sent me something to pay my bet with if I lose. Now all I have to do is to think out some stratagem to fool the joker who is, no doubt impatiently, awaiting me in the tea-house. Get the facts straight. A guide was taking a party round the British Museum. This sarcophagus is 5,000 years old. A bearded figure with a turban stepped forward. You are mistaken, said Nasrudin, for it is 5,003 years old. Everyone was impressed, and the guide was not pleased. They passed into another room. This vase, said the guide, is 2,500 years old. 2,503, intoned Nasrudin. Now look here, said the guide. How can you date things so precisely? I don't care if you do come from the East. People just don't know things like that. Simple, said Nasrudin. I was last here 3 years ago. That time, you said, the vase was 2,500 years old. Moral: it's later than you think. Cow with calf. The mullah went to market to sell his cow but nobody wanted to buy. A neighbour came along and said, "Let me try, you're doing it all wrong." "I must learn this art," thought the mullah. "First-class cow in calf for 5 months," yelled the neighbour. In next to no time the animal was sold. When he arrived home, Nasrudin found that a young man had called to enquire about marrying his daughter. All the mullah did was to try out his newly acquired skill. He was amazed by the speed at which the suitor rushed from the house. Let's have it every day. Nasrudin strolled into a village in the middle of a feast. Food was pressed on him from all sides. There was singing and dancing in the streets. People took him into their homes and treated him like a king. "If only our village was like this," said the mullah. "Nobody gives anything away there." "But, mullah," said the villagers, "this is a special occasion, an annual feast day." "Then I can make my own contribution in the field of ideas," said Nasrudin. "All you have to do, and we can do it in my village as well, is to institute annual feasts like this every day." The value of the man. "What do you want?" said the king to Nasrudin, who had managed with some difficulty to get an audience. "1,000,000 gold pieces," said the mullah. "Could you not make it less?" asked the surprised king. "Oh, yes, I could make it 5 pieces." "There is rather a disparity between the two sums, surely?" "Yes, the 1,000,000 gold pieces is what you are worth. The 5 is what I am worth." Clearing the matter up. A dog had fouled the road between 2 houses. Each neighbour claimed that the other should clear it up. Nasrudin was in court when the matter came before the summary judge. This judge resented Nasrudin's claiming to be an adjudicator in common law. The case was difficult, so he decided to take Nasrudin down a peg or two. "I will abide by your decision, Mulla Nasrudin," he said, "since this is a difficult case. You have the final word." "My decision," the mullah immediately answered, "is that since it is for the judiciary to clear up matters in dispute, you should clean it up." Hold that wolf. Nasrudin and a disciple went into a den to catch a wolf cub. Nasrudin went in first and found a fierce and full-grown wolf which attacked him. There was a terrible fight. In the middle of the encounter, the disciple cried out, "Stop kicking like that! I'm half covered with earth." "Yes," gasped the mullah, "and if I stop what I'm doing, the other half of you will be covered as well." Miracles have details. One day, Nasrudin put a chicken to roast in his oven and went out for a time. A local wag substituted a live chicken. When Nasrudin came back, he found the house surrounded by villagers. "Nasrudin," they cried, "Akram has performed a miracle. He has brought your roasting bird back to life." The mullah opened the oven door, looked in, and then turned to face the crowd. "Miracles are all very well, but there are certain matters of detail. Do you think that your power to work wonders, which I freely acknowledge on the evidence before me, gives you the right to theft? You have vanished my spices and salt. Who will pay for the firewood wasted? Worst of all, you have caused my effort in preparing the fowl to disappear." The water shortage. There was a serious water shortage in the Midlands. Due to lack of rain, the lakes which supplied a certain city's reservoirs were low. The council advertised for a water diviner. Nasrudin, who was working in a nearby factory, volunteered to help. He stipulated that he would have to work at his water producing on Monday. When the day came, instead of taking a divining rod, Mulla Nasrudin, surrounded by a crowd of curious spectators, took off his shirt, called for a tub and some water, and started to wash the shirt. Every now and then he looked at the sky. Someone protested, "What has washing your shirt got to do with finding water for the city?" "Patience," said Nasrudin, "for it is not the washing that does it. Every fool knows that it is just when you hang the clothes out to dry that the rain comes pelting down." Wife and secretary. "They have an interesting custom in England," said Nasrudin, "and it is one that I would like to copy." "What is that?" "Businessmen take their secretaries to Paris and pretend that they are their wives." "But you haven't got a secretary." "I have thought of that. All I have to do is to take my wife to Paris and say that she is my secretary." How to keep it going. Mulla Nasrudin used to stand in the street on market days to be pointed out as an idiot. No matter how often people offered him a large and a small coin, he always chose the smaller piece. One day a kindly man said to him, "Mullah, you should take the bigger coin. Then you will have more money and people will no longer be able to make a laughingstock of you." "That might be true," said Nasrudin, "but if I always take the larger, people will stop offering me money to prove that I am more idiotic than they are. Then I would have no money at all." Cooking. Mulla Nasrudin made nauseating meatballs and sold them at a stall in the street, with a sign beside him inscribed, "I really want to be a student." After a time, the people of the town could not stand the sight or smell of Nasrudin and his meatballs, so they made a collection. "Go away and study, Nasrudin, for heaven's sake. Here is the money for it," said their representative. "Oh, and by the way, what do you want to study?" "Cookery," said Mulla Nasrudin. Must be one of them. There were twin brothers in Nasrudin's village, and one day he was told that one was dead. Seeing one of them in the street, the mullah rushed up to him. "Which one of you was it that died?" Mistaken identity. Mulla Nasrudin was very ill, and everyone thought that he was going to die. His wife dressed in mourning clothes and started to weep and wail. Mulla Nasrudin alone was unperturbed. "Mullah," asked one of his disciples, "how is it that you can face death with such calm, even laughing from time to time, while we who are not going to die are in torment lest you leave us?" "Quite simple," said Nasrudin. "As I lie here looking at the lot of you, I say to myself, they all look so terrible that I am almost sure the angel of death will mistake at least one of them for his prey when he comes visiting, and leave old Nasrudin here a while longer." What's left? Mulla Nasrudin went to a donkey market. "Are you in the market for donkeys?" a merchant asked him. "Yes," said Nasrudin. "What about one of these remarkably handsome beasts?" "Just a minute," said the mullah. "I want you to show me the worst donkeys you have." "Those are the worst." "Very well then, I'll take the rest." The True and the False. The mullah was thirsty as he walked on the seashore, and he stooped down to take a drink. The water tasted horrible, and he rushed to the village well a good mile away. "Quick, give me a pitcher of water," he gasped out to a woman who was drawing some.
"Why, mullah, are you thirsty?"
"Why, yes, I am, but first I have to show an impostor what real water is like." First time. The mullah was invited to a country house for the weekend. His host had a number of horses paraded before the guests, so that each could choose one to ride. The chief groom announced the horses. "This one was ridden by Prince such-and-such, this one by the Duke of Blankshire." The mullah was not to be outdone. "Bring me," he said, "a horse that has never been ridden at all." Tried to fool him. Nasrudin was at a football game. He had been shouting until half-time and felt thirsty. "I'm going to get a drink of water," he told his friend. "Oh, and one for me," said the friend. In a few minutes, Nasrudin came back. "I tried to have a drink of water for you, but I found, after I had had my own drink, that you were not thirsty after all." Moral: if you really want a drink of water, drink it yourself. This podcast is copyright 2018, the Idries Shah Foundation.